Swift are your guides for the first of 3 visits this week to the RHS Hampton Court Palace Flower Show.
Hello, welcome to the 2017 RHS Hampton Court Palace Flower Show, an event supported by Viking Cruises. Now, with the palace on one side and the River Thames flowing on the other, this showground is one of the most magnificent settings you will find anywhere on this planet.
Certainly is. The vast 34-acre showground is home to 21 show gardens, and the floral marquee has over 90 exhibitors, mainly specialist growers in there. And of course there's the rose marquee as well, which celebrates the nation's favourite plant.
It's big and there's a lot to see, but don't worry. We will be showing and celebrating all of it. Now, Joe, we do have other shows with great settings. There's Malvern, Chatsworth now, Tatton to come. What makes Hampton Court so special?
It's sort of super grand, isn't it? The space, it really is spacious as well. It's a great place to, people are bringing picnics here and you can really spread out. It's a full day out. That's the way I see it.
I've been coming since it started, and one of the things I always feel here is a spirit of generosity. It makes you feel open and celebratory, and people shop and eat and just have a good time.
And there's a whole new palette of plants coming through at this time of year as well. Hot colours, a real spiciness in the planting.
Spicy show coming up. Anyway, we have Carol Klein enjoying the spicy new plants and some old favourites in the floral marquee.
Arit Anderson and I look at 2 of the conceptual gardens, a category of gardens that this show has become famous for.
And for the next 3 nights, Adam Frost will be taking plants that we see in the show gardens and showing how best to use them in your own gardens at home. And tonight, it's all about roses.
And you can share anything flower related with us using our Facebook page or on Twitter using the hashtag BBC Hampton Flowers.
But it's time to get on with the show. And earlier, Joe, Rachel and myself went to see 3 of this year's big show gardens.
It's the height of summer and Hampton Court is the quintessential summer flower show, and Paul Harvey Brooks's design, it just encapsulates all the warmth, all the atmosphere of the season. And he was very much inspired by travel. And this structure at the heart of the garden, inspired by Constantine's arches in Rome. So you've got the 3 of them here. And Paul's been very clever because he's made the central one seem really deep because he's used a darker tone of this lovely soft blue. So you've got that wonderful sense of depth. And then coming through here, it's almost like you're in front of a stage, this sunken terrace. And here he's used ceramic tiles which are just etched every so often with this lovely pattern. Just enough, not too much. And there's wonderful sandstone steps all the way around that then take you up to the planting. And here in the front corner, you've got these magnificent silver birch trees. They're multi-stemmed, so lots of architectural interest. Not only have you got the white of the bark, but then the lovely softness of the branches. Those leaves almost trickling down to meet the rest of the plants. You've got this palette of soft blues and mauves, things like the Verbena bonariensis with the campanula. You've got through it this chicory, which is a lovely bright blue. And then he goes and mixes it all up and adds a splash of yellow with the fennel. So you've got a change of shape and a change of colour. And everywhere you look, you've got these little pockets of that tiny daisy, Erigeron carvenscianus. Flowers and flowers and flowers all summer long, and it's perfect for just softening the edges between planting and paving. And you've got it repeated down here in this table. Continuing that rich palette of colours here, the allium spherocephalon just darting up through there to this rich, lovely blends of terracotta and raspberry in the achillea, which also has that lovely horizontal shape to the flower. It's a garden with some really lovely details as well that all speak of travelling. Things like the glazed ceramic pot that's come from Malaysia. We've got details here from China and from India. So you get this rich tapestry that brings in all those influences. And for me, this is very much, it's a romantic garden, all those soft colours in the planting, this wonderful blue that's so restful on the walls here. And it brings to mind that golden hour that you get between daylight and dusk.
This is the Children's Wild Garden by Adam White and Andre Davis. It's just not like any show garden I've ever seen. These paving slabs are huge. And then there's the sand and this enormous sculpture. But more than that, a child could come up to here and just give it a little shove and look. It turns. This garden is intended to be extraordinary for good reason, because it's designed for children on the autism spectrum. As you come through, and you've got this open space, and it feels confident and big, you can then make a detour, and you come up to a secret space. And this is calm and enclosed, and if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this, you can just sit and gather yourself. I think this is probably a first for any show garden, because there's a trampoline built in, and it's big enough for a wheelchair. So you can put the wheelchair on and just bounce it up and down and feel that extraordinary sensation of floating. You reach a crossing point. These enormous slabs are leading you on, crossing a stream. Then the path begins to change, and with it the textures. It's gritty, and the stones are smaller. There's a familiar nest there. I don't know how to get to it, but I'll find out. And a safe little place with different textures that you could put your toes into. And it's important to realise that people on the autism spectrum can be ultra sensitive to sound or touch or taste or sight. And this garden is very sensitive about that. So you're not crowding sensations in. They're coming one at a time. What a great idea. And I want to talk to the designers about how they achieve that. I first just must say I love this garden. Almost all gardens you see that have the word children associated with it are bright primary colours and sort of rubber matting so you can't hurt yourself. This is full of spikes and stones and places to get trapped and wet. What's going on?
Well, it's to represent the spectrum, and a lot of people think autism is just one condition, and it isn't. So we worked with a clinical psychologist who helped us develop the design in a very subtle way, so there are these little areas to discover and explore. And we looked at our inner child and remembered what we did as children, and that's what's inspired this garden, discovering the landscape.
I love the trees. I love the way it feels like a wood.
What we wanted were trees with a bit of personality. So we've got a fabulous weeping beech, and it's got all these asymmetric branches on it.
Beautiful.
And it makes a lovely den space underneath that children can play in.
Now, I understand that the public will be able to walk through.
Very much so, yes. That was essential, wasn't it, Andre?
Yeah, we want them to experience the garden from the inside. There's so much to see when you get inside the garden that we really wanted to let them
Your
have
last
that
show
experience.
garden here was 10 years ago.
Yes.
Are you planning to wait another 10 years?
20.
At least.
At least.
Well, good luck.
Oh, thank you so
Congratulations
much.
on the gold, and I think it's a wonderful garden.
Oh, thank you for
Thank you,
coming along.
thank you.
Cheers.
Normally show gardens are put together like a military operation. The designer's done all the plans, they've got a sponsor in place, the construction team, and of course a brief too. But this one has been put together very differently. It's the brainchild of designer Charlie Bloom, great name for a garden designer, and it's called Colourbox. And she came up with a more anarchic approach, the idea of coming up with a very simple layout but not quite knowing what was going to end up in the garden. So she put a shout out on social media for people to donate plants and materials, and whatever turned up would be the garden itself. It's a very refreshing approach to a garden. And it's got a very simple layout here, just pure symmetry with a water feature either side of this path that runs down the middle. And the perennial planting is what it's all about. There is no structure in this garden, there's no trees, there's no shrubs, but it doesn't matter, this is for a show, it's all about colour. What really does it for me on this side is the white liatris. Now that is a very unassuming plant, it's not actually in flower yet it does so much of this border. It gives that vertical accent, those white buds just coming out, and then that lime green foliage, which I love, and it sets off the planting around it and ties it into the planting back here and the taller fennel too. So it's amazing what one plant can do in a border. Now the one negative for me, this is my opinion, is that these three seats, I think they're really nice, nicely placed, a good focal point, but the colour is just a bit too strong in relationship to the planting. But I think otherwise, the community has done a fantastic job. People coming together and creating something different. Now that idea is exciting.
There are lots more show gardens, and we'll be showing you those on tomorrow night's programme and on Friday night. But of course it doesn't matter what a show garden is like, how big it is or how small it is going to be dependent above all on its plants. And if you want to see here at Hampton Court the best plants, the latest fashion, or perhaps the most unusual plants, then you have to go to the floral marquee. So there, of course, is where Carol has headed.
In the summertime, when the weather is high, you can stretch right up and touch the sky.
It's Hampton Court. It must be the height of summer. And what better way to introduce it than with this clarion call from these gladioli. Everything from raging reds to soft violets and brilliant scintillating lime greens. And they're so easy to grow. All you do is estimate when you want them to flower, subtract 90 to 100 days and plant your corms. Put them in a couple of inches deep, in full sun, in fairly fertile kind of ground, and they're going to reward you with these brilliant spikes of gorgeous colour, which last for weeks and weeks. Nothing could say summer more than a gladiola. But you don't have to grow your gladioli in straight lines. The Flavo series from the Netherlands illustrates that fact beautifully. The flowers are different colours. They're small, dainty, some of them are bicoloured, tricoloured even, and they mix beautifully with this indigo dreams. An agapanthus I've never seen before. And these gorgeous lilies. Nettie's Pride is bicolour that looks up at you. This whole stand with its rich and intense colours proves just how dramatic high summer can be.
Wow, look at you now, flowers in the window, it's such a lovely day, and I'm glad you feel the same.
Summer's all about vibrant, glowing colours too, like this glorious crocosmia. This is Paul's best yellow, and it couldn't be any warmer or more uplifting than it is. Crocosmias are so easy to grow, but they're totally hardy, unlike the gladioli, which you need to lift every year. You can just leave them to ramble around, just split them up every couple of years. But there are other quite different plants. There's a beautiful impressionistic feeling created by Potentilla hotwoodiana and the dainty little orange blooms of Agastache tango. They could almost be brushstrokes painted on a canvas. But surely, high summer is all about the spectacular, and you don't get much more jaw-dropping than these Erimuras. They're sentinels, head and shoulders above the rest of the madding summer crowd. They come from the sun-drenched mountain slopes of Turkey and the Middle East. They grow in practically no soil at all. It's thin, really well drained. And if you want to grow them successfully, then you should make sure that nothing else competes with them. They want all that sun to themselves. Hampton Court is famed for its fireworks, but you could not get a more breathtaking pyrotechnic display than that provided by Erimuras.
Now, what are the must-have plants at Hampton this year? The one that's on lots of stands, the one that you can buy and take home and put in your own garden. Well, I've spotted lots of these Eryngium sea hollies. And they're not just here in the floral marquee, they're dotted out in the gardens as well, so you can see how to use them nicely. It's a really great plant for its structure mainly. I like the spiky foliage and then these cones of flowers, and they last for ages even when they've faded and gone over. That structure will stay there. Now they come in a range of colours. There's lots of metallic silvers right through to the blues and almost purples like this. They almost look as if they've been sprayed with a spray can. But they do add a really useful form to the border and combine with other plants too. Here we see it beautifully intermingled with this Achillea. So we've got Achillea terracotta and Eryngium big blue. But it's not just the colour combinations, it's the flower forms that are really interesting here. So we've got the flat, soft heads of the Achillea and the explosions of the Eryngium coming through with that fabulous blue. And they will grow nicely together. They're both drought-tolerant plants. You can go on holiday and forget about them. So you can literally pick up this combination and pop it in your own garden. Well, flower shows are the perfect places to see old favourites like these Eryngiums come back into fashion. It's fair to say penstemons have been away from the spotlight over the last couple of years, but nursery woman Julia Mitchell is on a mission to put them back on the gardening map.
I love penstemons, and to people who don't know them, I describe them as being like a posh foxglove. They flower for a long time, starting in June and lasting until the first frosts. They come in a great range of colours, favouring the red end of the spectrum, from deep purple through to pure white and every shade in between. We've got over 120 different penstemon here at the nursery. One of my favourites really is this beautiful variety called Anderken Ann Friedrich Hahn. It's also known as garnet, which is a little bit less of a mouthful. Small, quite delicate flower, but beautifully coloured. Another one here, which is a little bit more unusual, is one called Connie's Pink. And you can see the foliage is quite a lot lighter. It's almost grey, but it has a really lovely flower. Again, quite delicate, really marked throat. Another one which is looking really beautiful at the moment is this variety here called Midnight. I mean, look at the amount of flower that is on that stem. Just absolutely beautiful. The oldest variety that we've got here at the nursery is one called Agnes Lang. I've only got one large plant of it here, which might not look very exciting, but for me is incredibly exciting. Agnes Lang was bred in 1860 in the UK, but is actually very, very rare in this country. As far as I'm aware, there's only me and one other person in the country that's actually got it. I think it's really important to keep the old varieties going. There are an awful lot of plants in the garden that have been around for years and years and years and are really good. And they keep getting lost to the newer varieties that are coming along. There are a lot of varieties being bred now that are really big flowered, really blousy, and they're just not my cup of tea. I like these classic, small flowered, but loads and loads of flower on each stem. three main rules that you need to follow when you're planting penstemon in the garden. First one is, don't plant in soil that's going to be heavy and wet in the winter. The second one is you need to make sure that you don't cut them back until the spring. In the spring, in your garden, this is probably something what your penstemon will look like. Not ideal. What you need to do is you need to cut it back hard. You need to go right back down to these ones at the bottom, to where those lowest new shoots are. It will start shooting again as you get into the spring months. The third and final one you need to do in order to get flower all summer is to deadhead. And when you actually look, you'll see a pair of leaves on the top which don't have new side shoots. What you need to do is go down to a pair where there's two new side shoots, and you just nip that old flowering stem out. Within a month at most, these little side shoots will turn into two long new flowering stems. And if you do that throughout the summer, you will have flower on all of your penstemon into October. The optimum time for doing cuttings is September. Having said that, you can do them throughout the summer months. You just have to choose the right material. If you look, you can see that the leaves at the top here have started fattening up. They're no good because they're starting to form flower shoots, not growing shoots, and you want to take cuttings from growing shoots. So come down, cut just below a pair of leaves like that, and you want it about 3 to 4 inches long. You can either use your secateurs to nip these side leaves off, but I generally use my fingernail and my finger to sort of rub it off, because what that does is it doesn't leave anything behind that can rot, and it leaves you with a completely clean stem. And you just pop that into the cell down to about there. We're going to have over 40 varieties of penstemon on our stand at Hampton Court this year, and they're going to be shown in a garden setting. We're concentrating on having a bee garden because bees love penstemon, and they're going to be used in plant combinations with bee balm, monarda, lavender, nepeta, and loads of other things that bees love in your garden. We got a silver gilt last year. It is really difficult to get a gold with flowering penstemon and with herbaceous plants. They're very difficult to make look perfect. We're going to give it a go this year, so fingers crossed.
So Julia, that question, what medal did you get?
We got a silver gilt, but I have to say we are really, really pleased. We're chuffed a bit.
Well, I have to say, look, it looks perfect to me.
Thank you.
And you've got so many varieties on here. How many?
There's over 35 in flower on the stand, so lots of different shapes and colours.
What do you think's looking particularly good?
The Dark Towers, it's the purple-leaved one. It's one of the digitalis types, so a lot taller than some of the hybrids, but really, really stunning. In terms of the hybrid varieties, Czar's a lovely purple, pure white throat, and one of my favourites, I've got many favourites, they do change all the time, I can't help it, is a variety called Hill Pink Bedder. It's an older one, quite tall, but a really delicate pink, beautifully marked throat, and a really sturdy grower, which is what you need in the garden.
So why do you think it's so important to continue growing the older varieties as well as all these lovely new introductions?
People still want them, which is obviously important. People still ask for the old varieties, but also they are very different to the new ones. That some of them are really delicate looking, absolutely stunning, and I just think it's really important to keep them going. I mean, we met someone this morning that bred one of the varieties years ago that we've got on the stand, and that was really exciting for me.
What do you think are the most eye-catching varieties that visitors are responding to, wanting to know more about?
Definitely Dark Towers.
Also?
Yeah, I know. Laura as well, because it's got those beautiful blush pink lips, and the Volcano series. Shorter growing, but easy in the border.
Spoiled for choice, I think. Well, congratulations. It's obviously really popular with visitors,
yes.
And good luck for the rest of the show. It's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Outside the marquee, one of the defining elements of the Hampton Court Flower Show are the conceptual gardens. And these spaces challenge our understanding of plants and design. Well, like all of the gardens, they have a message which they communicate through the language of horticulture. Arit Anderson and Monty have been taking a look at two very different examples.
Bill Wilder has designed the Element of Life garden to give us this really unique view, an opportunity really to see roots and soil structure that would normally be hidden underground. Bill, congratulations on your gold.
Thank you very much.
Really well deserved. Tell me, what made you do the garden design about soil and roots?
I wanted to actually be an educational exhibit about the actual soil composition, and I would just want to bring the viewer under the garden to see what's all the key elements in the soil, which is listed on the base there. The bubbles on this is actually root osmosis going up into the roots, and if you get that right at the bottom with all the key elements in the soil, you get an amazing garden. We want to encourage people to be aware, good soil composition, you're going to get an amazing garden above. If you're lacking all these key elements in the soil, it's not going to happen above, unfortunately. And we got all these soil erosion in the world today, bad agricultural practices. This is a future problem, not for our generation, but future generations like my children and our grandchildren. And if we can't sort this out now, it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Well, I think it's certainly going to make people think about what's going on underneath the ground. So we have to think about what's above
yes, of
as
course.
well.
Yeah.
So obviously the fabulous tree up there, what did you decide to use?
In the end, we went for the pomegranate. They say it's the tree of life, and yeah, and it looks absolutely fabulous from every angle around this, because this is like the centerpiece of this garden, the actual tree. And I just love the stem and the bark on it. It's amazing.
How does the watering, weeding moment happen when it's that high?
That's why I've got a natural wild meadow. The main reason for the wild meadow is because it's high up, it's 2.5 metres up on the ground, and we want it to be tolerant of all the wind and the exposure up there and the sun. And if you look at the garden, we've got this amazing Pizzaporeum hedge around it, because when you look at the structure itself, there's a lot of metal, a massive water tank there, a massive root structure. So we wanted a real green framework going around it, so it looks like a garden.
Well, it's great. Well, I really love it, and I'm sure all the visitors are going to love it too. Well done.
Thank you very much.
This garden, called Not for Sale, is a graphic depiction of the effects of the illegal ivory trade. It is comprised of tusks of the 80 elephants that on average are slaughtered daily for their ivory. Now that is in itself deeply shocking. So much for the concept or the idea. But every conceptual garden has to do a number of things. It's really hard. You have to have a good idea, a concept that either provokes or outrages or draws you in. You also have to make a show garden. So what we have here is a profound message that I'm sure every visitor feels that somehow they should engage with. But does the garden pull them in? And actually, like so many show gardens, that in the end is going to be a subjective decision. But sometimes it's quite hard to decide. Mark, this is an incredibly dramatic garden. And I think everybody looks at it with a mixture of sort of shock and awe, because I don't think a lot of people realise the extent of the ivory trade, and awe because in a funny way it's very beautiful. But I think it's a legitimate question. To what extent is this a recreation of a landscape, and to what extent is it a garden? What are your feelings about that?
Well, when we were designing the garden, we had in mind the concept which we wanted to get across with about the ivory trade and what was occurring, and to get this scale across. And then inside we wanted to develop the African savannah so that the public could come in and really feel a part of it.
Tell me about some of the plants you've used, because clearly most of these are not ones that we're familiar with. I mean, this, you were telling me, is dormant rather than dead, and yet you've never seen a tree or shrub look more dead than that.
Well, it's Acacia tortilis, which is the classic African umbrella tree.
Yeah.
They do go dormant in the desert conditions for up to 12 months they can without
Really?
water, and then they leaf and drop leaves very suddenly and quickly.
Was that easy to get hold of?
They're very hard to get hold of. I mean, these travelled from Oman in the Middle East. They got stopped at the UAE border because we had flight problems getting them out of Oman, and then they spent 5 days there, and then they made it eventually to Heathrow on Saturday, the day before judging.
Cutting it fine.
Cutting it
is
fine,
right there.
yeah.
And what about your leafy shrubs? I mean, obviously...
So, yeah, we have a Casomia over here, which elephants particularly like eating, so we wanted to put that in there for that purpose. We just wanted to have that, the real sort of classic picture of African landscape.
Well, it's a superb set. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I do really like the conceptual gardens, and you know, they're not easy to do. I think they're one of the hardest show gardens to get a point across. But this year, there's really good variety, and they're stimulating, and that's what they should be.
Yeah, I mean, stimulation can become irritation quite quick. But, you know, I don't mind that. A good conceptual garden should annoy somebody.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't find one of them sort of have to say, well, what is that all about? Then it's not doing its job. And to be something of a garden, something of a good idea that has legs and a bit of drama and creativity, as you say, really not easy.
Yeah, and all the really good ones over the years have sort of stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
They're still...
They are, for me, one of the brightest spots of Hampton Court. I think they're absolutely great. Still to come tonight from the RHS Hampton Court Palace Flower Show, an event supported by Viking Cruises, we've got one of our great garden designers, Andy Sturgeon, who has shown here at Hampton Court before, of course, but this year he fulfills a long-held ambition to put together a very particular garden display.
Now this is really exciting because it's basically a Chelsea graveyard.
And award-winning designer Adam Frost will be using all his skills to show us at home how to design with plants.
And Carol Klein is in the floral marquee exploring a group of plants that we can fit into any kind of garden. Sensational salvias.
Now, this year, the Hampton Court Flower Show is introducing a new garden category, the Changing World Gardens. These spaces are designed to reflect the more sustainable direction gardening is taking and demonstrating new solutions and highlight the importance of the environment in all of our lives. Rachel de Thame and Mark Lane went along to investigate.
Well, it really is a changing world, and I think this category of garden is going to be very popular with visitors. Now, I'm here with a first-time designer here at Hampton Court, Rhiannon Williams. Rhiannon, tell me a bit about the concept behind your design.
The garden is the urban rain garden, and it's all about clever rainwater capture, movement and storage techniques and how we can put that into a residential setting. It features a front garden and a back garden, something everybody has, and has just really cool, innovative ways that we can use water.
So is it very much designed for sort of storing all types of water or rainfall, or is it directed more at the flash flooding we seem to have been having more recently?
It's more towards flash flooding. It's trying to extend that time between when the rain falls to when it soaks back into the ground. So yeah, it's all about sort of extending that and moving it through planters, just trying to
maximise the
exactly.
benefit. Can you talk me round the garden a little bit?
So we've got our house facade, and then we've got our arrangement of raised planters, and the water comes down from the downpipe and works its way through different channels, different planters, reaching different points before finally ending up in our soakaway at the front.
I love what you've done here for obviously parking the car on,
Yeah.
but it's a sort of water feature. You've got the plants growing through the grill.
Yeah, everyone needs a parking space. That's something that we need more and more these days. So it's just trying to make it functional, and also, use the water.
Well, I'm dying to see what's through the front door.
Yeah.
Can we go and have a look?
Of course we can.
Excellent. Oh, goodness. This is wonderful. I absolutely love this. And it's a proper garden, isn't it? This
It
is the
is.
shape that most of us have, you
Yeah.
know, and garden with. It's fantastic. Now, what about these grooves that go across this little patio?
So we've got these curves. Not only are they a lovely feature to the design and added a bit more shape to it, but any surface rainfall that falls onto the patio gets channeled into the rill.
So now, as we go down through the garden, we've got beautiful planting again, and then this sort of continues through, so the water continues falling almost as it goes round.
It comes from the planter at the top, down into this middle planter, and then if we have a particularly heavy rain event, it falls into this final one here, where we have a drainage point into the underground rainwater harvesting tank.
I think you've been incredibly clever, actually, because you've got this long, narrow space, and yet you've managed to break it up into different sections, so it never feels like that. It's a really interesting design.
I really wanted to create a space that was functional as well as looking beautiful.
So it's your first design here at Hampton Court, but you have helped out on other gardens, haven't you? So how have you found the experience of having your baby this time?
It was a mix of nerves and excitement. There are times when I was like, why am I doing this? And other times, like when you put the planting in or when the paving goes down, and you're like, yeah, this is the right choice. I'm really glad I'm here.
Are you happy with how it looks?
Oh, I love it. It's exactly how I had in my head, which I didn't think would happen, but that's great, yeah.
Well, I agree. It is great. It's absolutely brilliant garden. I love it. And I hope that maybe your first time, but definitely not the last.
No, I hope to be back.
Another changing world garden is this perennial sanctuary garden by Tom Massey. Perennial is a charity for people in horticulture who have hard times, but there they have support, and this garden reflects that. So you have the hustle and bustle with the deep reds and the deep oranges, and as you go into the garden, it gets taller and more secluded, and right in the centre, a beautiful green sanctuary. So Tom, this is a beautiful garden. Can you just talk through the design for me?
Yeah, so the idea is that you're transported from this hectic, bustling showground environment. You move through oranges, yellows, the colours start to become more kind of happy and joyful. There's Achillea terracotta, there's a really kind of vibrant yellow Nyphophia lemon popsicle. In the red band, there's some Dahlia Mystic Sunrise, which is a really kind of black foliage and a really deep red flower. You then move through into purples and blues, and everything takes on a more kind of restful quality. The planting's simplified, there's less species in the mixes, until you reach this central sanctuary where we are now, where you're completely surrounded by this towering green bamboo with this still reflective water bowl and these simple stone benches, so it's supposed to be quite a zen, meditative space.
Really is, isn't it?
It kind of represents this inner calm and inner peace.
You've used grasses in a tremendous way because it sort of links everything together. What grasses have you actually gone in there?
So in the blue mix, it's Calamagrostis, and that gives a really tall, airy quality. And then I've got some Melinia in the orange mix, which again gives a hazy quality to the planting, which I think without it would feel really quite stark. But the grasses really kind of give a sense of movement, which is echoed in the bamboo as well.
For me, this is just a wonderful space, Tom. I mean, I could sit here for hours, just be surrounded by this green. It's a real space for meditation and reflection. It's brilliant. I love it.
Thank you, Mark.
I think those changing world gardens are a great addition to the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more of them myself. Now, each night this week, Adam Frost will be sharing his designer know-how to ensure you get the most from your plants when designing your garden. In his first instalment, Adam's focus is the perennial favourite, roses.
You know, for me, roses are a truly fantastic plant. When you think about it, our relationship with them goes back generations. Every single one of us has a favourite. Mine is Rosa Gertrude Jekyll. But why do I like it? For me, it's a hard-working plant. I can use it in so many different settings to create different feels. You know, when it comes to design, how we deal with our boundaries is incredibly important. And roses can really play a part there. Whether it's south, east, north or west, you can find a plant that will work well in all those conditions. They're also great for adding height, you know, whether it's over an archway like this, which will really help sort of create tension and pull you through to the next space, or an obelisk in a border, even maybe an arbour at the end of the garden. Even if you haven't got a lot of space, just a few well-chosen pots that are planted around a little seating area can really bring colour and scent into that space. You know, from that slightly sort of, I suppose, old-fashioned formal feel back there, this is softer. This is the way that roses can be used, I suppose, in design to add structure to a herbaceous border. And if you look, it's really clever. You look at the plant closely. When the bud first comes out, there's a real red tinge, and that red tinge gets picked up in the penstenum and then in the sanguisorba. And then as they open, they become softer, and that gets picked up in the achillea. And that achillea then works its way over there, all the way through that wildflower meadow. And I think for me, in a sense, it demonstrates that they can add structure to the herbaceous planting, but actually, I think you could more or less drift those into that wildflower setting. You're really proving that these plants will work in so many places. Do you know, design-wise, that's what I really love about roses, is that we leave that sort of setting of a wildflower meadow, and we rock up here in this more modern setting. They really work. If you look at this border here in front of me, and I strip it right back, you start sort of building it up. You put your tree in, so you choose the right tree for the space. And then you add that shrub layer. So here we've got lovely clipped beech and pittosporum and the salix in the front there. But the roses could work really well within that layer. These eryngiums look crisp and modern and give it an edge, but again, they look comfortable with the roses. Why do we choose the rose? Possibly, first of all, for the flower. But if you think about what else they bring scent. So when you're choosing that rose, maybe just think atmosphere, choosing that plant that's really going to add to the feel that you're trying to create. Do you know, I think summer for most of us is about colour and how that's brought into the garden. And there's one particular plant that seems to have risen to the top again, and that's salvias. And Carol has gone to have a look.
Salvias are everywhere you look this year. Salvias, salvias and more salvias. They're members of the mint family, Lamiaceae, and they've got several characteristics of that family. They've got square stems and these beautifully lipped flowers. This is a huge genus. There are around 1,000 different species. Some of them shrubs, some of them hardy perennials, some of them annuals, and they all contribute so much to the summer display. They give you longevity of flower, flowering right the way through from June till the frost, and brilliant colours, a whole kaleidoscope. William, because these plants, these lovely salvias, are becoming so popular, what people really want to know is how to grow them. What do you recommend?
Easy, plenty of sunshine, well-drained soil.
And even if you haven't got a garden, you can grow salvias.
Grow them in a container, perfect.
They look gorgeous there, don't they?
They do, you can move them around, put them into the most sun that you've got in the garden.
And also, I think one of the advantages of that is that you can bring them close to your nose.
Indeed.
Because they've got aromatic foliage.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And once you've got your salvia, you can propagate them fairly easily, can't you?
Are you going to try and put me out of business now? Softwood tip cuttings, take them any time from early May through to about July.
Right.
And whenever you do a prune on the salvia, you're going to regenerate new growth. Take those nice soft tip cuttings and they root really quickly.
And just around the edge of a pot.
You can do them round there and then keep it humid. You know, either put a bag over the top or put it in a propagator. Shape, well, not full sun, but on a windowsill or something.
But they just want to root, don't they?
They want to root. And you know, this time of year they're going to root in a fortnight.
Well, we've got a question here from Katie and Heather on Facebook, and they both want to know what's the best way to overwinter their salvias.
Depends what they are, really. If they're shrubby Mexicans, leave them in the ground and don't prune them. Anything that's tender or borderline hardy, give it a ride in a wheelbarrow. So if it's in a pot, take it into a conservatory, cold greenhouse, or if it's in the ground, dig it up, pot it up, a bit of a prune and try and keep it ticking over through the winter.
So having stored your salvias over winter, plant them out in the spring or bring your pots out. But by this time of year, some of them are looking a bit leggy, aren't they?
They are. They're getting towards the end of that particular beginning of flowering period and they're starting to tip bare. You've only got a few flowers left. They need a pruning, basically. You need to take about a third off them.
But isn't this called the Hampton hack? Isn't that something that originated
Yes,
at
it
your
did.
nursery?
That all happened at Great Comp, absolutely. One of my customers came in and coined that phrase. I said, you've heard of the Chelsea chop, haven't you? I said, well, you need to do one around about the Hampton Court time. And he said, well, we should call that the Hampton hack then, shouldn't we? So that's where it actually started, and that's about 3 or 4 years ago.
It describes it perfectly.
Of course, salvias aren't the only plants that can benefit from a bit of judicial pruning at this time of year. And we're calling it the Hampton hack, but of course it might be that in some years, such as this one, because it's been very, very warm, plants are actually further ahead than you'd normally expect, so you might not choose to do it. But generally speaking, you would take a plant like this as a phlox, and it's a perfect specimen. So I would cut this probably about a third of the way down, just above a pair of leaves, like that. And that diverts that energy. So instead of going straight up now, it's going to produce more growth from here. And you'll get branching stems, so you get a bushier plant, and probably with many more flowers. I'll just do this one here as well, coming about down to there. And that's it. And you can play with the proportions on the plant. You can leave some stems longer so they flower earlier, take some further down and they'll flower later. So just experiment a little bit. And I've also got here some hardy geraniums. Now, depending on the type of hardy geranium you have, some of them, particularly the older forms, reach a point where the flowering's pretty much over. But these you can actually be quite brutal with and take them right back, the foliage and everything, just remove it just a few inches above ground level. It looks brutal, but what you will get after a few weeks and then through into the autumn is a nice new flush of leaves from the base, and you'll probably get more flowers on that as well, and at least it will look attractive in the border. Some hardy geraniums keep on flowering, they keep producing flowers. So for those, I prefer to just take the stems down, the flowered stems. You can see here the flowers are finished, and just take those down further into the plant, so you're leaving most of the foliage on, and that's continuing to produce more buds, more flowers through the season. Sometimes deadheading is as simple as just pulling off the top of a spent flower, like with these coreopsis, or taking them down a little bit further on the stem. The main thing is to keep doing it. You keep the plants looking good and you add lots more flower power. Now, gardening is a playground of experimentation, and great garden designers are always looking for new ways of doing things. Award-winning designer Andy Sturgeon has long held an ambition to build a very different kind of garden, one using the recycled remnants of past Chelsea show gardens. Now, to help realise this dream and promote garden design as a career choice, he recruited a band of volunteers and students who are very keen to make their first foray into the world of horticulture. We caught up with Andy as he began his journey to creating this ambitious garden, hunting for iconic Chelsea relics.
Now this is really exciting because there are places like this up and down the country, and it's basically a Chelsea graveyard. At the end of Chelsea Week, some gardens get relocated, but often they get broken up and bits all go off in different directions. The reason that all these gems still exist is thanks to my good friend David Dodd, landscape gardener extraordinaire and builder of many, many show gardens, 2 or 3 for me as well. So how long have you been collecting all this junk then?
Well, it's not, how dare you, it's not junk, this is my lifeblood. Since we've been doing Chelsea, probably for about 10 years now, it's loved, it's cared for, it's crafted by real sort of skilled people, and I hate seeing stuff go in skips. There will be a home for every piece of material down here.
Come on then, show me it all. I've always had this daft idea of making a new show garden out of old bits of other Chelsea gardens, taking the key elements and structures, the iconic pieces, and reimagining them and making an entirely new show garden. This is going to be slightly different because normally I might spend a whole year doing perhaps dozens of drawings and making models and really nailing down every aspect of the design. But at this point, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have very little time, very little money. So I've come here to see if I can find some inspiration and find, hopefully, lots of things to use.
I've got these fantastic concrete benches, and they are absolutely stunning. These came from Sam Oven's garden last year. He's never asked for them back, so I thought we might as well use them somewhere or other.
These are great, so I need to try and accommodate things where I can. It'd be a shame to pass over something like this.
This was one of the Radio 2 gardens. This was designed by Matt Keatley. If I can plug these holes up, then we've got an instant pool.
If you're starting with this, that's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah.
This looks like it's from the Beauty of Islam garden from a few years ago. That's really, really brilliant. That's quite a find. When you do a normal garden, you spend a year worrying, basically, sleepless nights, all the rest of it.
So you've avoided all the sleepless nights by leaving it all to the last minute.
No worry at all.
I like that.
No
I
worry
like
at
that
all.
thinking. There's no plans, there's no drawings, and so to call it organic is a slight understatement. To call it chaos is probably slightly more an accurate description of it.
I think it's really David who came across the idea to use it as a way to promote landscaping as a career, because there is a crisis going on at the moment. People are finding it very hard to recruit people into the industry because they're not seeing it as the great profession that it is.
We put a call out to all colleges and apprenticeship schemes, and we had over 40 people volunteer.
It's just a fantastic atmosphere, and we're learning an awful lot about all the things that we don't normally do.
Ultimately, I would like to become a garden designer. Hopefully, like Andy Sturgeon.
So these are the pools that we found in David's yard. It's amazing what you can turn some of these things into that looked in a way like junk, but now they're going to be things of beauty here. Sam Oven's bench, and what's really helped it is that as well as having the stuff from David's yard is that we've managed to borrow all sorts of things from lots and lots of other designers. These are some of the columns that Cleve West used in one of his amazing gardens. They look brilliant. And then we've got one of Sarah Eberly's trees from Chelsea Flower Show this year. So we've got quite a happy band going on here. I suppose at this point, I don't quite know how it's going to turn out. You know, it's my reputation I've got to think of, so we've got to really go all out to make this work, to make it perfect, really.
Well, chaps, I recognise so many bits on your garden. I mean, sorry.
Well, it's not our garden.
Pieces.
It's other people's garden.
It's other people's garden.
It's like a trip down memory lane for me of show gardens and you know, Cleve's columns and Andy's fins, Dan Pearson's rocks, and these benches we had in 2014 from Adam Frost, and even stuff from last year is wonderful.
You wouldn't normally put this many different things into any garden, really.
Yeah, I think, you know, the key features, you wouldn't normally have this many, that's for sure.
But it works, it feels cohesive as a design.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I was terrified it was going to be a complete dog's dinner, just getting all this stuff and putting it together. But that's the reason for all these hedges, that they compartmentalize it, but in a way so that you can't necessarily see one bit from another.
OK, if you had to choose one part of this garden each as your favourite, what would it be?
I love water and I love construction. Andy's planting's beautiful. Yes, we'll love the planting. But for me, I love this paving and going over the pool in that sort of beautiful reflective water. I think it's really, really crisp and clean work, and I love it.
Probably my favourite thing in the garden is all the different vistas, but of all of those it's the longest vista, which is basically coming up down from that bottom corner there and winding through all these plants.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Up to where we sit with the gravel path. And
David, you didn't get a drawing?
Well, it was how can I put it? It was a sketch. It was loose.
When did you get the sketch?
We were already on site, ready to set out, and then it turned up.
In my defence, I didn't know what we were going to get and what stuff we had, so I did always say that I'd do it last minute. I didn't quite mean that last minute.
The whole idea of this garden is to get more people interested in landscaping, get more landscapers on board. So how's it been working with inexperienced landscapers and mentoring them?
The wonderful part for me was seeing them as they started to flag a little bit after the very heavy construction and sort of digging and lifting and mixing concrete as they just learnt how to do. Seeing Andy then come in and doing the mentoring of the planting was wonderful, and I think he did an exceptionally good job, and their enthusiasm suddenly lifted again. The whole emphasis of this Go Landscape campaign is to encourage people, and what better place to start than with a show garden and seeing what can be achieved at such an excellent standard.
Well done, chaps. You know, it's a great garden, but also for encouraging people into landscaping and hopefully, you know, showing them it can be exciting, and, you know, your enthusiasm just shines through. I'm sure everyone's going to really love it.
That's been a pleasure, thank you.
Well, you've got to give credit to David and Andy trying to encourage more landscapers, you know, into the world, really. I started off mixing up cement for a bricklayer, and I just love being outdoors. I love the physical engagement in landscaping and actually watching a garden appear before your eyes. It's better than shuffling a bit of paper from one side of the desk to the other. Well, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, the doing is really important, but it's not a division, is it? I mean, none of these show gardens here at Hampton Court would exist without a collaboration between the landscapers and the designers. I mean, how does that work?
Well, the designer will come up with the idea, but they're always going to talk to a landscaper about what's achievable, how materials go together, and rely on the landscaper to really make it happen. Yeah.
You see, I'm a practical gardener. I love working like this, but if we could get younger people, not just to be a designer, everyone wants to be a designer, but actually doing it. I mean, can you imagine, if you're 17 and say, I'm going to train you how to drive a digger. Yeah. I learned to drive a digger when I was in my 20s. Such good fun, you know, ripping out, moving earth, creating.
Yeah, I know, you're making me want to have a go.
Yeah.
But, you know, none of these gardens would be here without diggers, and they're only here for a week, so we've got to make the most of them.
Well, we have no more time this evening to make the most of anything, but there is still masses more to see here at the RHS Hampton Court Palace Flower Show.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow night at 9:30 on BBC Two. Nick Bailey will be looking at the science of scent, and I'll be talking to a very special royal guest on a garden that's been designed especially for the veterans of the armed forces.
So join us tomorrow night. Till then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.